as I think about the Mulberry and people who come here to visit and float and do all the things, how do you guys service customers, and how do you guys service the area?
Well, the reason I got into this, I was just so, I'm from Louisiana, and making these trips up here to go, run the river. I was just captivated by it totally. And I thought, well, there's bound to be a way to make this at least somewhat work, or at least I'm willing to give it a try. I knew it was going to be a seasonal, and that it, quickly found out really what I became was a storekeeper, because that's a year-round thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to gear up to be, the outfitter when the river and weather allows. But that was my, the reason I was here was to try to be an outfitter. And, it was, timing was right. A lot of people had floated the Buffalo River and were looking for something a little more challenging. And here we were offering this service. I mean, within a couple of years, they were just beating the door down to get in to rent canoes. Yeah, they go down to the Mulberry. They got to rent your canoe, and you might put you in the back of a truck and take you upriver. But we developed a real loyal following. Some of the same people are still coming 40 years later.
Wow.
I mean, it's part of their life is making a trip here.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back then, really in the late 70s, early 80s, it was more of an out-of-state thing. Kansas City, Louisiana, Texas, whatever. In particular, Kansas City, and then I'd say North Louisiana. But often the boaters were from elsewhere, and the locals didn't take to it as quickly. In fact, there was some, I don't know about opposition, but just hesitancy about the whole thing. And now it's very much a local pastime.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their own kayak, and it's more of a local thing now.
Most of the people you see come in here are actually from Arkansas, from the area. Is that what you're saying?
Especially once the weather warms up. Now, these loyal out-of-state people still come, and they tend to come a bit earlier because they know that's when you're most likely to catch the best water. So early season is primarily these hardy out-of-state folks, and then you get a little bit warmer. Let's say you get into May, and it becomes more of a local thing, and the weather's more important than the water to them.
Yeah, right. They're here for the good times, floating down,
right,
fishing a little bit.
I wonder why it took a while for the locals to catch on. It seems like something right in your backyard that you get excited about. I wonder what that is. I don't know if you have an answer to it. I'm just curious as to your best guess.
Just pontificating.
Yeah.
I've wondered the same thing when I got here. I said, "Well, gosh, why is it? Am I just the fool? Why is it somebody from 300 miles away appreciate this more than the guy 3 miles away?"
Yeah.
But it took a while, but now it's totally accepted and part of what they do.
Yeah. So how would you describe the Mulberry? And maybe as it relates to other rivers that we have here in the Ozarks, how is it different, and what do people chase the Mulberry for as opposed to going to the Buffalo or, going to Crooked Creek or, other things like that?
Well, I think each river creek's got its own thing. Crooked Creek's known for great smallmouth fish.
Sure.
The Buffalo, can't beat the scenery there.
Right.
The Mulberry, more challenging than the Buffalo by a bit, not just extremely a lot more, but more challenging. And then, maybe even a step above that or at least equal, is the Big Piney. And then in terms of and along the way, there's the Kings. It falls in there in the scenic fishing category.
Right.
So each river's kind of got its own personality. The Mulberry's characterized with quite a bit of access especially on the upper end. So that fits what a lot of people are looking to do. Show up and make a 4 mile, 6 mile, 8 mile run. Maybe not even devoting the whole day to it. Maybe work a little bit and then get here and make a float.
Yeah.
So it's pretty accommodating in that regard. got in some places the roads right near the river. So it, you can have a few hours and you can show up and have a good time on the Mulberry.
Right. So in terms of access, I think back some history that I at least have heard of or know of is it used to be a lot of private landowners, or I think it is still a lot of like adjacent private landowners, and access has changed and opened up over the years. But back in like the 1980s, wasn't there some big case here in terms of riparian land ownership? How far you go to the middle? Do you own the river? Can people float by? Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Well, it's a famous law case, and it's if you take a course of real estate law, they'll probably touch on that subject, and it's not entirely settled now as to what if you're a trespasser, or if you're standing between the high water marks fishing, for instance.
Right.
You're standing on property that maybe you're in the water, and then the landowner might say, "You're standing on my land," but I'm between the high water marks. And but in the case of the Mulberry, a local landowner upriver from here at the low water bridge said that the river flowed through his property, and therefore he owned the river
Because he owned both sides.
He and the land that the river flowed over.
Oh, okay.
So since he owned the land that the river flowed through, he owned the river. Well, he won in local court. Hard to believe now, but that was the case. And the Ozarks Society, they had been, of course, instrumental in saving the Buffalo River. And they jumped in, and actually they were party to the suit. They were sued because they had a booklet called The Mighty Mulberry. And so he sued the Ozarks Society and the only outfitter on the river at the time, which was Wayfarer of the Ozarks. All ended up in court. And they won in local court here in Ozark. And, in the headlines back then, you asked about, reluctance to float. Well, heck, the headlines in the local paper then were, it was almost like the canoeists trying to take land from the landowner, that sort of thing. And an interesting thing, the case was appealed to the state Supreme Court by then Attorney General Bill Clinton.
Really?
Before he became governor of Arkansas. And so it got appealed to the state Supreme Court. State Supreme Court reversed the ruling and said, no, navigability doesn't just mean commercial barge traffic. It also includes recreational use. And so at that point, it was legal to float the Mulberry. Still didn't settle the issue of if you got out, you fell out of your boat, you're standing in shallow water.
Trying to, get the water out, you tumped over.
I think, Arkansas trespass law says that if you're between the high water marks, you're legal to do that. But that landowner in particular would disagree with that.
He would disagree, and he
he disagreed vociferously.
Yeah, shotgun in hand
for many decades.
Yeah.
So Bill Clinton helped save the Mulberry.
That's right. And you can be around some people that maybe they political persuasions lean far differently than Bill Clinton.
Sure.
But you can kind of disarm them with that and say, well, okay, maybe you don't like the man, but how about this?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. What was that case called? You may have said, Kyle, but I didn't catch it.
I didn't say, but
I've got an article about it on the wall.
Do you?
Here, I can't quote it correctly what the name of it was, but
I remember. So the case is especially unique and interesting.
Just the one that I almost died over.
Yes. So my friend Kyle Plunkett here, Brad, we were fishing in a stream that was not deemed navigable, but it was plenty navigable enough for a canoe or a kayak to float down. We were fishing in it one day.
Not deemed officially.
Not officially deemed, right. And we were trying to argue with an angry landowner whether or not we should or shouldn't be there. And Kyle, in the middle of the argument, goes, well, actually, according to this court case in 1980, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, I don't really give a damn what that court case said, blah, blah. He cocked his gun. We were like, okay, we're not going to die over
we're
this.
leaving.
But he was trying to cite that court case you just
I
mentioned.
had forgotten the name, but I'd read up on it before we went fishing.
I
that
remember.
day.
Oh, you were expecting trouble.
Oh, kind of, a
I
little
don't know.
bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I wouldn't say I was looking for it, but I may have been expecting it.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I think that ruling just referred to the Mulberry. So it may be that there would have to be another thing that went to court
Right.
that would refer back to that and say, no, that river is also navigable like the Mulberry's navigable.
Setting precedents
Right.
in other cases.
But a reasonable mind would say, okay, the precedent's been set.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is an interesting case. Have you seen that have ripple effects or impact anywhere else just coming out of the Mulberry?
You mean the legal?
Just from that court case, have you seen that or anywhere else in Arkansas that court case kind of have that precedence and that be said or anything?
Not that I know of. I think in a lot of minds that kind of settled it.
Yeah.
Now that's not settled in other states. I have people from Kansas, for instance, that say they've tried to float streams and goes through a landowner's property and they do not have the right to be on that river.
Yeah. How has access changed over the years? Just being that the Mulberry is, to my knowledge, it's mostly on private land, right? It goes through private land.
Well, most of a huge majority of the property that flows into the Mulberry is national forest.
Okay.
The Ozark National Forest.
Right.
But as people settled, homesteaded, they tended to homestead the land along the river. It was the best land.
Yeah.
And then as the area became depopulated, maybe they gave up their land or sold it to the Forest Service, but they tended to keep the land along the river. So what you have is maybe 90% of what flows into the river. I'm making that number up, but it might not be far off. That would be Forest Service land that flows into the river, but around 50%, slightly over 50% of the Mulberry, the banks of the Mulberry are owned by Forest Service.
Okay.
So
it's actually a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of private land, but it's in the 50-50 range.
Yeah.
Access it has greatly improved, I think, and I've made that a big part of what I've done here. In the beginning, there was just Wolf Pen, or Highway 103, and then Wolf Pen, and then Redding, and then Low Water Bridge. Well, that was the source of the controversy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Turner Bend was private access, and then Milton Ford downriver.
Yeah.
And then another spot that was down as a river exits the forest called Mill Creek. And there were really, Wolf Pen and Redding were Forest Service access points. Well, in the midst of that court case, the Forest Service didn't help. They closed the access points, and they didn't want to take a stand in that issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at any rate, they've gone on, and years later we've got a special use permit. Turner Bend does, and Birds does also, to be outfitters on the river, and we have to pay a fee and a percentage of what we do if it involves Forest Service access. But since that time, and I'm not making it up, they've been very instrumental in fact, they even named High Bank and Indian Creek's an access also, and Campbell Cemetery is a traditional spot where you could get to the river, but it was, you could get stuck getting down there too.
Mm-hmm.
But urged the Forest Service to make improvements, and in 1 year they improved the roads into Campbell and High Bank, and so those became much more usable. And then volunteer effort, we built the landing at Campbell Cemetery, and then we formed the Mulberry River Society, which is a volunteer group and led by a fellow that's not with us any longer, Tom Perry. But we built two landings, one year and one the next. I think it was 2017 and 2018, or 16 and 17, or 18 and 19 perhaps. But anyway, 1 year we built Indian Creek. The next year we built the landing at High Bank.
Okay.
And beautiful, beautiful landings. And, it didn't cost the Forest Service anything. And, raised some money and all. Then we had a big dedication there. Had the governor and the senators and all there. It was kind of a big deal. And so a lot of the access on the Mulberry, like our counterparts on the Piney were saying, gosh, I wish we had the access that you guys do. And I said, well, we built that.
You got to work for it. Yeah.
We that was not the Forest Service's idea, or they didn't have the money, or they didn't build that. They just gave us permission to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really have help open up access on the Mulberry, and do you feel like more and more people come, the more access that we have, the more people are able to come and enjoy the Mulberry, or why is that important to you to open up access?
Well, safety is a big issue. You need, like, say, people get here and they've only got 4 hours or 6 hours. Well, if they don't have the right length float that they can take, they're going to jump on it anyway. Well, if the only thing that was available to them was a 12-mile float, they might not get done until it gets dark or after dark.
Right.
And so it helps us run our business in a safe manner, but it also helps the guy with his own boats that doesn't even come in Turner Bend. By having options that you can tailor your trip based upon the water level and how much time you've got. So I think it's very important for safety, having adequate access. If there's a problem, you can get to the river and get to somebody quicker if that were to happen.
Yeah.
But also crowding. The parking lots aren't huge at these places, so sometimes if you pull up on a peak day, you can't get there. It's too full.
Right.
So you have to alter your plans, and maybe there's enough room here for you to start and take out there. And spread the crowd out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. What would be some of your favorite floats on the Mulberry, or kind of thinking through, if someone's considering coming down to check out the Mulberry, what are some of the highlights? What would you say are some good floats that you would mention for people to go check out?
Well, there's almost 40 miles of the Mulberry that's commonly floated.
Okay.
Now, the upper end where the access is more readily available, that's where most of the floating occurs, because the water's good and there's good access. So probably at least 80% of the floating that occurs on the Mulberry occurs above Turner Bend.
Okay.
Doesn't all end here. It might end at Redding. It might end at Birds. But and the stretch to Birds, the gradient's about 16 feet per mile. Then it slows to 13 feet per mile or so for the rest of its path.
Okay.
The lower end of the river is the least floated, but primarily because access is pretty limited. But very, very pretty down there. Beautiful bluffs down on the lower end, and a lot of people maybe have been to the Mulberry several times, but they've never been there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that falls on me too. My floating, being I'm in the business and always trying to accommodate people, it's rare for me to take a whole day and just go able to get on the river. It's usually just a half a day or something. So it's hard for me to make it to the bottom end of the river.
Sure. Yeah. You're working.
Yeah.
Could you float the whole thing in one day, or is 40 miles just not possible?
It has been done.
It's been done.
In fact, we even
Wow.
issued
Awesome.
a kind of for fun, just said, call it the Wolf Pen to Mill Creek Challenge, and said, you do it, but you've got to do it with the river no higher than 4.5, and for us to count your time. We don't want anybody doing it when it's dangerous.
Flood stage, just pushing you through 1,000 miles an hour.
Right, and doing it real fast and claiming you set the record. Well, we're not going to acknowledge that record, but if you do it under that level, then keep your own time, come in, and there was a handful of people that did it.
Really?
In fact, one father and son were here to go. Just here to float the river, and they floated from Wolf Bend to here, and they were having so much fun. He came in, and it was about noon. He says, "We're going to float. Will you come get us at Mill Creek later today?" I said, "Really?" Yeah, and so that was not even really planned. I said, all right, go for it, and so, others that did it, picked the day and maybe had somebody following them along to check on them, but this father and son were just game, and
They just happened into it.
How quickly could they do it? Because now I really want to do it.
yeah, okay, well,
I'm interested.
It's been a while since anybody did it. I'd have to look that up, but I think under 7 hours is the record. I don't know
Wow.
exactly.
Okay. Probably paddling.
Pretty much paddling the whole
Yeah,
way. Yeah,
sure.
yeah. You can't.
Can't just sit and float.
No,
But
that's not floating. No,
Yeah.
that's
it's
really
been
cool.
done solo too
Man, that's pretty
in
cool.
a canoe. I don't think anybody's done it in a kayak that I know of.
Well, it
That's
sounds like
really
we
neat.
we need somebody to come do that.
Sounds like
Yeah,
need
we
to do
might
that.
have to reissue the challenge, and get this thing going
We
again.
might have to. Somebody could come break some records over here.
I'll have to pull out the old records, or we'll start anew.
There you go. I like it. What other? Well, I was going to ask you this. What's the fishing like on the Mulberry? Do people come here to catch smallmouth? Do they rave about the fishing, or what is your experience?
They don't really come here to fish, and sometimes when they do bring their rod, they end up losing it by turning over.
Yeah.
So we kind of discourage it unless people really know what they're doing.
Sure.
But I'm told I'm always so darn busy. But I'm told if you show up here in late May, early June, and the water's right, which is 2 feet, or just barely enough to get over the shoals.
Yeah.
I've had people that say, "Well, look, I've fished everywhere. This is as good as anywhere I've ever been."
Really.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not year round. That's not, and it's not happening that often. But people that know how to fish do well here.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that being the case. Anytime you think about a place that's not maybe traditionally thought of as fishing, or people kind of migrate here for the floating and they're not fishing, it could leave some pretty good holes
Oh,
untouched.
absolutely.
Where, they're just settled in there and they're waiting for a good water day to eat some flies that you throw at them or whatever lure you got.
One fellow that works for us here, Mike Hurst, is a very good fisherman, and he does well.
He'd probably be mad that we're even talking about fishing.
That's
over
right. I
here.
should. He probably.
We covered before we came in a short story backstory for everybody listening. We just got back from an all-day thing with Arkansas Game and Fish, tagging and checking on some mother bears and dens. Got to hold the cubs, all that kind of stuff. So we just had bears on the mind, and apparently the first is that right? Legally taken bear in Arkansas since they were brought back.
Since they opened up the season.
Okay, so I'll just leave a cliffhanger. There's a story about a bear, and I'll let Mr. Brad tell it.
Well, I've got one to follow up to that, but
Okay.
the first bear that was legally killed in Arkansas, and you had to bring it into a check station, and turn them in was a check station. So turn them in could claim that yes, we checked the first bear that was legally killed in Arkansas.
That's cool.
Now, one day I was renting boats to people, and a lady had been walking around the store, and she'd seen pictures that we have on the wall of hunters with their deer and bear. And so we're driving upriver, and the van's full of people, and this lady was sitting right behind me. She said, "Sir, I'm the shuttle driver," and she said, "Are there a lot of bears around here?" And so I referred I said, "Oh, yes, ma'am. The first bear that was legally killed, blah, blah, blah." And she says, "Well, that's not really what I meant. What I meant was, are there a lot of bears down by the river?"
Yeah.
Boy, the van got real quiet. And I said, "Oh, no, ma'am. Bears are real intelligent. They know better than to come down to the river. There's so many snakes in the river, bears would never come near the river." And she screamed, and her husband laughed so hard. He was just looking at me and gasping like, "Oh, you're killing me." And I had to stop and let him get out and make sure he was okay. He was laughing so hard.
Oh, man.
The bears won't get you. The snakes will.
Snake.
Yeah.
My wife would hate that.
Yeah, she would.
What kind of events do you guys do? I know you guys put on some different events. What do you guys kind of do year round?
Well, we just got through having two signature events. One, we always try to have the first Saturday in March, and that's the annual cleanup day. We've done it 32 years. And, it's very successful. We have 200 plus volunteers show up for this. And
200 plus?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's become we've had people that, like, for instance, the Illinois River flowing out of Arkansas into Oklahoma. The fella came up and studied how we did ours so he could go back and have a cleanup there. And they've got one on the Kings River that's patterned after this.
Yeah.
So it's not only been way instrumental in helping clean this place up, but also that's spawned other events that are, helping in other places. So we had that just, the first, May the 3rd or 5th, but and then
March the 3rd.
March, yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then this past Sunday was March the 12th, and this was the 42nd annual Jungle Boater race.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, at first we called it the Turner Bend Canoe Race, and then we opened it up to kayaks, and we borrowed the name Jungle Boater somewhere many years ago from a friend of mine. He and some guys were paddling out east, and they were kind of thrashing around, but making it down the river, but long on spirit, but kind of short on technique. And some guy there that was a guide, he said, "Well, you guys are just a bunch of jungle boaters," and
I love it.
so I loved it, and I said, "Look, I'm borrowing that name."
Yeah.
So it became the Jungle Boater Race.
I love that name.
I don't know what it means, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you're a jungle boater. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a jungle boater.
Yes. Cool.
So
Yeah.
so what's the event? How does it go?
Well, it's a race from Birds to here, and that's 8 miles.
Okay.
And we have a gong that and the slogan for the race is "Bang the gong, get it on." And so we take this gong up to the start, and we bang it, and then, all right, go, men's tandem, go, and we start them by category, and bang the gong each time a category starts.
Cool.
And and then this year's was T-shirt was Jungle Boater, welcome to the jungle.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I like it.
But it's a lot of fun. We, like I say, we had 100 boats in it this year. Very, very hard to crowd.
And you split it up. You've got men's tandem, you've got singles, you've got ladies.
Yes, we have paddleboard, men's paddleboard, women's paddleboard, ladies kayak, men's kayak, had a raft category, parent-child, geezer. You have to each be at least 60. Geezer solo, geezer tandem, mixed tandem. That'd be just a guy and a girl, and then men's tandem is the last category to start.
Okay. Gotcha. Man, that's cool. That sounds like a good time.
It's a good time.
How many people raced this last year or this last week?
Yeah, 100 boats.
Over 100
100 boats.
Man, that's cool.
Which I think that's a pretty good size. It's a pretty good size race.
Yeah, absolutely. What other kind of events do you do?
Well, we host the Arkansas Canoe Club.
Okay.
The aforementioned, and I don't put that on. I'm just the host.
Yeah.
Of it, but very, very proud to do that. And then we've, in the fall, we've always had this, in the spring, we have a big turkey contest, and turkey with the longest beard. That led to a lot of jokes. We measured, one time we had a bunch of bikers here, and we were measuring their beard, see which turkey had the longest beard. But the big buck contest in the fall is something we're going to always do, and we always have.
Yeah.
That's we host some private events, but those are the primary events that well, here's a big one. We host it. We don't organize it, but the Gambler 500.
What is that?
It's in the fall, and the rules are you have to buy a car for $500 or less, and then you can fix it up however you want to. You can spend as much money as you want, but then they show up here, and I don't know if any of them sleep the whole weekend, but they have a big time, and they bring in a trash dumpster and set it here, and then they go off through the forest on this course, following these pins that they got to go here and go there and check in on the with their phones showing that they've been to this spot, been to that spot. But it's supposed to be 500 miles through the forest in these old beat up cars. And you might have one that's got a guy, sitting in a saddle on the roof, and another guy, they'll have steer horns coming out of it. And
Oh man.
one of them look like the Batmobile. And I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But they go along and they also have a contest who can pick up the most trash while they're doing all this.
Okay.
It's like Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mad Max decides to pick up litter in the forest.
Yeah.
Mad Max saves the national forest.
Yeah.
In all these custom cars, and that's pretty cool.
I've never ever heard of that.
I have never
I'm
heard of that either.
Really disappointed that I'm just now learning about it.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Sounds
not
really fun.
Yeah.
I think that the event we host is the second Gambler 5. I'm told the original one was in Oregon somewhere. And then somebody decided, hey, I'm going to have one in Arkansas. And so I think the one we host was the second one. Now there are others. It's like a circuit almost.
I've got one more question for you, Mr. Brad.
Hit him.
What, to you, what makes the Mulberry River special, magical, beautiful, just all of the above?
What makes the Mulberry special? Well, I mean, one thing, the color of the river is beautiful. This jade color. I think it's kind of unique to this river. But the combination of the scenery and the it's not the biggest whitewater. It's not the Cossatot or anything like that. But accessible whitewater that works for most people. And the fact that we've been able to. It's now a clean place and relatively clean and with beautiful features up and down these landings. And so yeah, it's been my home for over 4 decades now.
What is that what you would attribute to keeping you here for so long, or kind of what's kept you here for 40 plus years?
When I moved to Arkansas, I thought I didn't have a plan, but I thought I like being in business. I'd had to take my dad's business over for a few years, and I like that idea of being self-employed, and I want to make a difference while trying to make a living. I want to. I didn't want to be like an activist just shouting about how things ought to be in the world. I wanted to hands-on clean things up myself or fix things up and turn it in. Boy, it needed some help. It was run down.
Mm-hmm.
There was garbage here. So that was, that just suited me, that the challenge of trying to make things better and if I do that, people will come and they'll see that, hey, that guy's trying to do right. And I feel like if I do the right thing, I can make a living here.
Yeah.